Hello everyone and welcome back to My Opinion. And for this video I'll be talking about a big franchise, but a franchise or a team rather that's shown inconsistencies especially in the last two seasons. And that is the Kolkata Knight Riders. So today the Royal Challengers Bangalore lost to Delhi Capitals, and despite that both teams still qualified because the equation was that if Delhi got the target of 153 in 17.3 overs or earlier, then KKR's net run rate would become higher than RCB's net run rate because RCB's net run rate will go down to below KKR's one. And if RCB defended it, they would have had to win by 19 runs or more to make Delhi Capitals' net run rate go below KKR's. And because Delhi won, but it was after the 17.3 mark, both teams qualified, and in the end Delhi are second, Mumbai are first, and if SRH beat Mumbai in the last game of the league stage, then SRH will be third and RCB will be fourth. So KKR have to pray that SRH don't beat Mumbai in the last game of the league phase. And I think that SRH have shown some great signs. I mean, they smashed Delhi, and I know they were 87 for 4, but Jason Holder just didn't break a sweat while finishing it off. So it's two convincing performances, and honestly, if they bat first with decent runs on the board, they're in Sharjah, and I mean, again, you can't really bank this to be the high scoring ground that it was at the start of the tournament. It has slowed down a lot. But I'm saying if they can get a decent score, 170 thereabout, maybe 175, and with their bowling attack, and without Rohit Sharma, the aura of the Mumbai Indians, I know they are still strong, but I think him being in the side, despite the fact that maybe he hasn't contributed as much as he would have liked in recent seasons, it's just the makeup of the side is different. And so I think if SRH can get wickets and Rashid Khan can strangle Mumbai Indians, I think SRH could have a very good chance of beating Mumbai and claiming the third spot. So coming back to KKR, as I said earlier, the last two seasons they've not been very smooth sailing, and this season you saw especially Dinesh Karthik stepping down as captain midway through the season. Now this move confused me because we've seen this happen in other seasons with other captains in the IPL, and in the end the team's fortunes haven't really changed. And we've seen that KKR have looked just as unconvincing under Owen Morgan as they have done under Dinesh Karthik. And it's just the fact that unfortunately this season I feel that if you had to pick a team, that which team would you say was the worst to watch? I mean, let's take CSK out of the equation because I guess you could say they had old players, but which team, apart from that, all the other teams had, fairly younger squads and with players playing regular cricket and regular international cricket. So if you look at all the teams and you'd say which team was the worst to watch this season, especially towards the end of the tournament, it had to be KKR really, because there hasn't been much consistency. There hasn't really been any kind of run of wins. And you saw they beat Delhi, and then straight after that they got smashed by RCB. And this is the thing, is that there's been a very unhappy, unsettled aura around KKR this year. I know that this year there hasn't really been this unrest like there was last year, especially Andre Russell last year quite understandably wasn't very happy because he had to win the game from unwinnable positions on a consistent basis. And on such a consistent basis, they ended up scoring 510 runs in the season, which is what you'd expect a top order batsman leading from the front to score. This season, there hasn't been any unrest, and Andre Russell has bowled well, but he hasn't really featured in this tournament with the bat, with his highest score being 25 off 11 balls against the Rajasthan Royals in their most recent game and their last game of the league phase. But it's the fact that, again, it's been very unconvincing. And apart from, you look at the batting, I mean, apart from Owen Morgan, who, alright, he's only got 150, it says he's only got 150, and he got the 50 in their most recent game against Rajasthan. But look, he scored above 400 runs in the tournament. And I saw that on ESPN Cricinfo. At the time I saw this, he was, and that was before this game between RCB and Delhi Capitals. He was 9th on the run scoring list for this season in the tournament. But actually, if you look at Smart Stats, which takes into account of like the actual game situations and the situation around him, he was 5th. And that's how much, he's been a very influential factor and really the only really... Okay, Nitish Rana has played well a few times, so Shubman Gill. But really, as far as consistency is concerned, Owen Morgan has been the only one who's put his hand up for KKR. And despite his knocks may not be huge, they have been the difference between KKR bundling out for really small totals, like they did. Even though he scored 30, they scored 84 for 8 against RCB, and getting to fairly respectable ones. The bowling, however, has been good this season. It's taken, an improvement from last year. I mean, last year you saw that seamers weren't scaring anyone. And I think the reason why, even though you wouldn't really think, and I didn't think Pat Cummins to be a T20 bowler, I thought his role was fairly one-dimensional, which it kind of has proven to be, because he's been mostly a power play bowler, and his overs outside the power play haven't really yielded much, and he's actually gone for runs when he's bowled at the death. But I think that the reason why they paid 15.5 crores for him is just because he brings that wicket-taking ability, which, to be fair, take that 4 for out, which was a bit lucky, let's be honest. He hasn't really got the wickets this year, but I think that he's been... Under Dinesh Karthik, he bowled 3 overs in the power play, whereas under Owen Morgan, he's bowled 2 overs in the power play, and Owen Morgan has used those 2 overs outside, and he bowls 1 more at the death now. And it's something which I quite frankly didn't agree with, because if you saw when Dinesh Karthik was captain, that 1 over of Pat Cummins outside of the power play wasn't exactly very influential, and he wasn't very effective. And if you saw at the death, he doesn't... Yes, he bowls Yorkers sometimes, but he can't really execute his plans at the death consistently, and therefore goes for runs. You saw AB de Villiers take him for runs in RCB's first game against KKR. And it's just that... So, yeah, that's the reason why I thought giving another over to Pat Cummins in an over where he probably wouldn't execute his plans again wasn't really the greatest of decisions. I guess it didn't really hurt them that much that he bowled the second over as much as I thought it would. But again, I think that it could have gone badly. But Pat Cummins, for me, has actually been one of my favourite bowlers to watch this season. I think, all right, he hasn't had an eye-catching season, but just to watch him bowl, I mean, the 3 overs he bowls in the power play and the 2, it's just that the batsmen have... The reason why he hasn't got wickets is because the batsmen haven't taken any risks against him. And I mean, a bowler bowling 140 kph, swinging the ball both ways, I mean, it's a nightmare for any batsman to face. And so they would have probably thought, and it definitely did seem like they were thinking that with the cautious approach they took. They just played him out in the power play. And they did kind of hit him for runs in the overs he bowled outside, because obviously with the ball being older and he's not really much of a death bowler, and so they took their opportunity to hit him for runs then. Another standout, I think, this season has been Varun Chakravarti. I mean, he's been economical and has taken wickets this season, and he's been reliable in pretty much every game. And I think that his 5 for 20 that he took against the Delhi Capitals in KKR's second game against them, I mean, you look at the margin of victory that they got. And if they hadn't got... Because the thing is, their net run rate was at minus 0.83. And then that 59 run win against, well, the second place side got them to minus 0.48. And if it wasn't that much of a big win, you're looking at the thing now where, you look at the margins, the whole 19 run loss and 17.3 overs. I mean, that could have been even more tight if they hadn't won that game by a big margin, and also if they hadn't won the Rajasthan game by a big margin, 60 runs. It could have been tight. And so I think that the thing that kind of started off that in the end, if you saw that, all right, the net run rate isn't great, and they improved it with this. Luckily, they improved it with the 60-run win. But if they hadn't got that big win against Delhi, we may not have even been talking about them making the playoffs. And yeah, I think that as a bowling unit, Shivam Mavi has bowled well at times. And Lockie Ferguson, who I think is the hardest bowler to hit in the world right now. I mean, I've thought this for a long while. And I was surprised that they actually bought Pat Cummins for that much money, because I thought, would you not play Lockie Ferguson? It was kind of very confusing to me. I can understand why they would buy Pat Cummins, but I thought that they would play together so that Lockie Ferguson could bowl at the death and Pat Cummins could bowl up front. But it wasn't to be until the game against Sunrisers, where Lockie Ferguson came in and immediately made an impact, where he took 5 wickets in the game, 3 in the innings and 2 in the super over. And he was really the only reason why KKR won that game, because a hamstrung Andre Russell jogged up to bowl the last over, and in the end gave the most anticlimactic super over that you ever see. I mean, no one was expecting it to go to a super over, but it did. Also, Sunil Narayan's action was deemed to be suspect midway through the tournament, and therefore they said that he could bowl, but I'm saying that obviously when you've been kind of tagged for a suspect action, bowling again may be dangerous, and therefore he was left out of the side. And not long after that, his action was deemed to be legal again. And I don't think that there's been enough transparency about that, and it's honestly very confusing how they, in very quick time after they deemed the action to be suspect, suddenly his action was cleared, which is, yeah, as I said, is very confusing. But I don't think he had a bad IPL this year. All right, it wasn't a standout IPL, but I'm saying that especially so against CSK, where he was held back. The matchup against Shane Watson worked in his favour and KKR's favour in that game, where he got Shane Watson out, who was a set batsman who was on 50. And that match was in Abu Dhabi, and you saw in the earlier stages of the tournament, teams would much rather bat first in Abu Dhabi than chase. But I think that Abu Dhabi has become better for batting as the tournament has progressed, and therefore now you see teams preferring to chase rather than to set the total. But as this was in the earlier stage, Chennai after that struggled to get any momentum, and I think with Varun Chakravarti getting Dhoni out for 11 of 12, you kind of saw the game slipping away from CSK. And we didn't lose by very much in the end, but we still lost, and it was a game that we shouldn't have lost. And I thought it was very good captaincy from Dinesh Karthik to hold Sunil Narayan back. And so, yeah, I think that the batting, however, apart from one innings, hasn't really worked. And yes, he scored 64, where it was a great innings. Yes, full credit to him for that. I think that even he would have been slightly surprised that Delhi Capitals in that game, and this was in the 59-run win, continued to Ashwin was continuously bowled. And then knowing that Sunil Narayan does not have a great record against pace bowling that's above 135 Ks, who bowls Marcus Stoinis. And then the inexperienced Tushar Deshpande also bowls, who's getting it wrong. And therefore Nitish Rana and Sunil Narayan hit Delhi around the place, and after being 42 for 3, they went to 194 for 6. So again, that was kind of given to him on a platter. I mean, it was a very entertaining innings to watch. It changed the course of the game, and full credit to him for that. But apart from that, he's not really had a great tournament, and he's actually batted ahead of Morgan in a few occasions because they've wanted to up the scoring rate, but then he's got out. And this is another thing here, that coming back to just batting for this one moment, Owen Morgan was batting way too low in this season, and I understand it was kind of a very selfless role that he was taking, and he was still doing well with the bat, with the more limited deliveries he got to face. But I just feel that with him batting at number 4 for England, and him, with as much experience as he's got batting in that position, if he had batted in number 4, already I talked about the smart stats, where even though it said 9th, and that was, again, I say, before this game, so I think now he's in 10th. The smart stats actually said 5th. And that's because that's how influential he has been for KKR with a bat, even though he hasn't actually batted that many deliveries as he would have done batting a number 4. So if he had taken advantage of his own good form, and I think he's been in career best form for ever since the West Indies series just before the World Cup, I think he's been in career best form. And if he had just taken advantage of his own form more, KKR may have not even been in this position, and then they could have qualified for the playoffs, or maybe not completely on the back of Owen Morgan, but I'm saying that they would be breathing a lot easier than they are now, and just a few runs more here and there with a good bowling attack this season could have meant that KKR didn't have to, or wouldn't have to, watch the SRH versus MI game and hope the SRH lose. But yeah, that's the thing, that I felt that Owen Morgan should have promoted himself up the order more. He still did very well in the position he batted, but I'm still saying that he could have provided more to the team rather than just the 150, because it's not that he failed. He was looking good in pretty much every innings. It's just that he didn't have the time to get those big scores. So that's Sunil Narine. So that's Sunil Narine and Owen Morgan. And with Owen Morgan, there's another player who's kind of been impacted by that, and that's Dinesh Karthik. We've seen how good Dinesh Karthik's been at finishing innings. And so you'd expect him to, you've even seen, when you would think he's out of form, he comes in against Kings 11 in the first game against Kings 11 and scores 58 off 29. He then comes in and scores 29 off 14 and then 21 off 10. So when he's given the role of finishing, you've seen how well he's done. So considering that, why would you... And the thing is, Owen Morgan, towards the second half of the season, is the captain. So that means he can decide the batting order. And it's just that, why would you still promote someone who's not been doing well when sent earlier ahead of yourself, who bats you bat a number 4 for your country? I mean, for me, it just didn't make sense. It was a repeated occurrence where Owen Morgan kept on sending other players ahead of himself. And it didn't help the other players' confidence in Sunil Narine and Dinesh Karthik. Yes, Sunil Narine you would say could look forward to his bowling, but Dinesh Karthik, yes, his keeping was still very good in this tournament. You saw that catch he took off Ben Stokes in the latest game. But I have a feeling that it's just, even Dinesh Karthik couldn't really bat in situations apart from 3 occasions where he was actually comfortable batting in, and we've seen how good of a finisher he is. Why couldn't you just bat him in his position? So that means, alright, Andre Russell didn't really do much with the bat this tournament, but Morgan 4, Russell 5, so it gives him more time before he can explode, rather than last season coming in and, alright, I think they didn't leave him that much to do this season, which was a good positive on KKR's part. Yes, at first, initially, they kind of left him a bit to do, and yes, he failed in those. But especially after what he did last season, I can't really blame him for having a bad season this year. I mean, the hardest thing for a power hitter is to be consistent. And scoring 510 runs, as I said before, the amount you'd expect to score a real, a top order batsman leading from the front, I think he's allowed to have a bad season the next year. And if you look at his numbers from last season, with the bat, it's completely anomalous from other seasons where he'd be expensive with the ball, which he wasn't this season. I thought he bowled very well apart from the one hamstring over, but he was injured. He bowled very well this season at the death. He only bowled usually 2 overs per game. And the thing is that the numbers from the other season, he's not been anywhere near as influential in the other seasons for KKR as he was in 2019. And so really, I don't think that it was a fair thing to expect that kind of a season from him again this year. And so the fact that he hasn't got runs, I'm not really saying he's out of form. I'm saying that, look, what he does is very hard and no one else will be able to do what he does. And so you will fail. And I'm sure he will get back into form, so to speak. But again, I don't really think he's out of form. It's just that with more failures, I think his confidence he was in two minds. And so, yeah, all right, we didn't see the best of his batting this tournament. But then again, I don't think that this should really play in our minds. And I hope it doesn't play in his mind, which it won't too much. So that's Andre Russell and Dinesh Karthik. So it's now the next day, and SRH have smashed Mumbai Indians in the last game of the season, the last league game of the season, to make sure that they pip KKR to go to that fourth spot. So that means, third spot. So that means that KKR are now out of the tournament, and I don't have a huge problem with this because the more deserving team should go into the playoffs. There should be 4 deserving teams, and there are 4 deserving teams, and SRH have played way better than KKR, especially in winning their last 3 games against the other teams that have qualified, and especially winning them after that loss against Kings 11, which you thought would they even stand a chance the way that those 3 teams were playing. Those 3 other qualified teams are playing. But for Mumbai Indians, for some reason they rested their 2 best bowlers. A decision that I completely didn't understand because, you saw the game. Not only the batting was, I don't really mind about the batting. It's fired all season. The one disappointing game isn't exactly going to do much. But if you take Karen Pollard's 3 sixes off Natarajan out, this was nowhere near. It was 150 something, I think it was near. And the fact is that if you take those 3 sixes out, this would have been near some 130 odd. And it was just nowhere near enough. And especially with the dew factor in Sharjah, they should have got higher. And they did get a total which you thought, all right, knowing Mumbai Indians and with SRH against the table toppers, you kind of thought, yes, SRH are good, but you thought, would Mumbai Indians kind of show how good of a side they are and, bowl SRH out? But they didn't, because taking their 2 best bowlers out, Bolt and Bumrah, this attack is absolutely toothless. And despite how well Pattinson's bowled this season, he got hit for runs today. Nathan Coulter now has been rusty every time he's come into bowl in a number of games, in pretty much all the games that he's played. And the lack of a standout spinner, because only Rahul Chahar and Kunal Pandya are spinners in that team. And alright, they've been good, but they're not scaring anyone. And so a combination of all of this and, against David Warner and Vidyaman Saha that have both had great tournaments, and they knew exactly what they had to do. They weren't about to give Mumbai Indians even a small chance, and they took the responsibility on themselves and ensured a 10-wicket win and capped off such a resurgence by SRH, and they've claimed 3rd. And RCB better watch out, because a team that's lost 4 on the bounce in such tame ways against a team that's beaten the 3 teams that have qualified, they're going to have to be on their A game against SRH. But yeah, it's just that, another standout point in this game was that Rohit Sharma played after his missing a few games due to injury. And he got out early, he scored 4 off 7. But the thing is that he wasn't named in any of the 3 squads to tour Australia later. And the thing is that I don't understand this, because if he's not completely in that bad of a condition that he can come back and play competitive cricket again, and especially if he plays the rest of the games for Mumbai in this tournament, they could have at least... I understand why they didn't name him straight away if he was injured, because they would want to give him time before they take a call. But now that he's come back, and what if the injury wasn't that bad? Especially you look at someone who... Australia offers very bouncy condition. It's very hard bouncy tracks, and with how well Rohit Sharma plays the pull shot, easily the best in the country and one of the best in the world. And it's his record against Australia and the amount of confidence he carries in international colours, and it's very confusing to see why they wouldn't put his name down anyway. And so yeah, I hope if he's not back to full fitness, I hope he gets back soon, because he's an important player for India and it's a joy to watch him back. So yeah, that was the Rohit Sharma. And the fact is that Mumbai Indians, it's not very ideal that they lost this game by 10 wickets, because Delhi Capitals would have been watching this game and thinking, we've got back to winning ways now. We've beaten a team that has qualified also along with us. And now Mumbai, there may be a weakness that if you take out Bolt and Bumrah, the rest can't really pull their weight. I mean, they're not bad bowlers, but they're not exactly standout bowlers in this format. And maybe they need this kind of cushion of two world-class bowlers in all formats of the game, in Bumrah and Bolt, to really flourish. And yeah, Delhi could target that. Yes, their last loss against Mumbai wasn't exactly ideal, but then again, it was Bumrah and Bolt who stood up, and if they will definitely play in that qualifier one against Delhi, and Mumbai may even win. But it's that Delhi will not be looking at past form and normal Mumbai. Yes, they will take that as confidence into the game, but they will know that both sides will know not to underestimate each other, because they are the two best teams in the tournament, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a Mumbai versus Delhi final. However, though, with SRH playing the way they are, you never know, SRH could make it to the final, and what a story it will be, especially how, incomplete they looked. I mean, we were kind of looking for a finisher for so long in the season, and we still haven't found it. But even then, with like those inconsistent, and with Bhuvneshwar Kumar being injured, the bowlers have, banded together, the Indian pacers, and they've really bowled well. And honestly, Vriddhiman Saha has come in and played brilliantly, especially after that time. I think he played the same against KKR, where people were thinking, he couldn't really accelerate, and you kind of thought, well, is there really a point in him being in the side? But then after scoring that 87 against Delhi, and again a 50 today, he's really has turned it around, and he scored over 200 runs in his 4 games that he's played. So yeah, that's very good on him. And yeah, I think that RCB would not want to play against SRH, and coming back to RCB, their bowling has something that I praise. I talked about strangulation, and I thought that their attack actually relies on strangulation more than any other side this season. But the problem is that, it has become, especially in chasing, it's become better to bat in the latter stages of the tournament. And especially look at in Abu Dhabi, it's actually become a lot better to bat. And especially we saw in the Mumbai-Rajasthan game where RR beat Mumbai, it was actually a fast-paced game. I mean, after Pollard got out in the first innings, ever since then it was a very fast-paced game. And so it all comes down, I think that because the batting conditions have got better, I think that strangulation is it is still possible, but the bowlers have also not got it right. And I mean, this also comes down to one thing that I talked in a previous video. It's the recruitment. And there's one particular bowler who I'm not saying is a bad bowler, and I talked about him even before, but the fact is that if the IPL was happening in Bangalore, would he have even made the side? And I understand Staines giving ones, but so is Udana. And I'm saying that in my eyes, he's only bowled one good ball in the tournament that hasn't involved chance. And that was to Surya Kumar Yadav when he got him out for a golden duck, the caught behind. And that was all the way back in RCB's third game in that brilliant win against Mumbai. A Mumbai that wanted to win the game so much that they actually scored 89 off the last 5 overs instead of 90 to take the game to a super over. And RCB still overcame the momentum that Mumbai would have got in that game and still won the game, which is great on them. But that momentum has largely gone with these last 4 tame losses, where the batting, we've seen how RCB are I think they score under 7 and over in between over 7 and 15. And also the over-reliance on AB de Villiers and Virat Kohli. Apart from Padikkal, Kohli and de Villiers, no one has really... yes, Felipe's come back in and is actually, looking very good when he bats in his second spell on the side. But I'm saying that there's not been any standouts, and the fact is that that's the reason why you've seen AB de Villiers and Virat Kohli, both of them, they kind of look to stay until the end, and that means that the middle overs, there's not really a fast scoring in the middle overs because they're conscious about what comes after them, and they're not bad players. The players who come after them, Shivam Dube has done all right on some occasions, but he's not really... He's been out of the side a few times based on conditions, and he's not exactly managed to do it. There's still a doubt on whether him and Washington Sundar, despite both of them being good players, can finish the innings and provide that kick even if de Villiers and Kohli aren't there. And Washington Sundar has bowled brilliantly this season. But yeah, I feel like it's been a problem for a long time now, the over-reliance on de Villiers and Kohli. Finch is out of the side because after that, he scored 150 and a 47. Even then, in the 47, he didn't look completely comfortable. And he's not really been a feature in this season. And, he's played a lot of games, but he hasn't got the runs to back the team's faith in him. And that's why he was dropped for Felipe, who, back to his role in opening the batting, has played very well. But yeah, I think RCB wouldn't exactly be happy with their performances the last 4 games. And despite the fact Virat Kohli said something that I did agree with, and it's that they have played good enough cricket to get to this stage, being the playoffs. And I think that they have, but they're going to have to bring out their A game to beat Sunrisers, a team that's got momentum. And if they don't, if they bat first and get into this muddle between over 7 and 15, it would be very difficult for them to then come back, especially with the confidence that Wriddhiman Saha and David Warner are carrying. And coming back to the bowling in general in this tournament, I think there are a lot of sides or quite a few sides that need to rethink their bowling combinations. You look at Kings 11, ever since that mega auction in 2018, there's been Andrew Tye, Hardus Filion, and Chris Jordan are still in the team. And those bowlers haven't fit with Kings 11 at all. And you look at Chris Jordan, despite he bowls well sometimes, you never quite know what he's going to offer. And apart from Shami, the 2 wrist spinners do their best. Murugan Ashwin is a very reliable option, and Ravi Bishnoi seems like a very good bowler, and he's relatively inexperienced. Ashdeep Singh has also come in very handy when he's played. Apart from Mohammad Shami, there's no real bowler who's making you scared. And if you especially see in the wickets, if Mohammad Shami doesn't get the breakthroughs, despite the other bowlers chip in, really, if you take out Mohammad Shami, this attack is very blunt. And I think that ever since 2018, especially, with Mujib also being out of the side, they haven't found that real all-round attack that covers, that there's not a single weak link in. And I just feel like they should move away from some of these players who, they moved away from Ty, they moved away from Filion. Maybe they have to move away from Chris Jordan, because the thing is that for a number of years now, he's been a better athlete, and pretty much in all the years I've seen him, he's been a better athlete than a bowler. And he's a brilliant athlete, he's a brilliant fielder. But I just feel like, as a death bowling specialist that a lot of people call themselves, and I'm not saying they're bad bowlers, but in the end, proper bowlers bowl better than them at the death. You compare like Jasprit Bumrah and Tom Curran. I mean, Jasprit Bumrah can bowl at any stage in the innings and doesn't only resort to cutters and stuff. He can bowl even length ball. You saw in 2019 how many length ball he bowls, and even this season the hard lengths have worked, especially with bowlers with raw pace such as Bumrah, Rabada, Nokia, etc. You don't need these death bowling specialists because in the end they just usually only bowl cutters and they get hit around, and in the end, and despite however many times they get hit around, they still get played in the next game as death bowling specialists, which I just don't understand. I think there kind of has to be a statement call taken with players who, if you're not performing, if you're just giving runs to the death, then despite you being a death bowling specialist, I think that you should still be sitting out. So yeah, that's my view on the whole death bowling specialist thing, is that good bowlers bowl out the death. And yes, there are new bowlers who bowl their 4 overs up front sometimes, but you just they do their job. They swing the ball and they just bowl out. You look at Deepak Chahar, he's been getting more swing and he's got the ball to swing for longer than all the other bowlers in this tournament. You look how well that he's done in this season, and I think his economy is under 8 as well. And yeah, that's my thing on these. A lot of these the franchises, you look at Rajasthan Royals have to get. So you look at Rajasthan Royals, and it's that apart from Jofra Archer and Shreyas Gopal, no one has been wicket taking or economical. And especially you look at Jofra Archer has taken 10 wickets in the power play, an economy rate of 4.34, and the others have taken 5 wickets and they've gone at just over 10s, and it just completely undoes the good work that, you know, Archer sets the tone, and then that tone is basically unset because of the other bowlers. And we even saw the most recent game against KKR for them, is that Archer got the early wicket of Nitish Rana, and then because the other bowlers weren't as threatening, Shubman Gill and Rahul Tripathi knew this, and so they played very well. They played some very nice shots, but in the back of their mind they would have known that see Archer off and the other bowlers, you can, you know, assert yourself and score runs. And that's what they did, and it kind of gave KKR a bit of momentum after that early wicket. And you look at Rajasthan Royals' overseas players in Butler, Stokes and Smith and Archer, and you think they should be taking the tournament by force and consistently winning games. But one, the overseas players have misfired at times, and also it just shows that without a good bowling attack, without a well-rounded bowling attack, you can't win games consistently, and therefore you can't make it far in tournaments. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is because KKR, it's so important that KKR have improved in this facet, where you saw last season where their pacers weren't scaring anyone. This year they have Pat Cummins and Lockie Ferguson. I think they had Lockie Ferguson last year as well, but he didn't get consistent games, and nor has he this year, unfortunately. But they have Pat Cummins and Lockie Ferguson, and I would like to see them, despite it may be at the sacrifice of some other core overseas players, I would like to see them playing together because, again, like I said, Pat Cummins up front, Lockie Ferguson at the death, someone like a Varun Chakravarti who's got an India call-up. I'm very happy that he's got an India call-up, and I hope he can succeed. And, you know, you've got the other young Indian fast bowlers that KKR have. You see they have the under-19 pacers like Mavi and Nagarkoti. It's a very well-rounded attack. And that's why if you see the struggles of the other teams like RCB, Kings 11, Rajasthan Royals, it's a team such as SRH, Delhi, Mumbai. Even though Mumbai, you could say, if you take Bolt Bumrah out, it's still kind of a bit toothless. But RCB, especially Delhi, SRH and KKR, I think that they have a very well-rounded bowling attack. And so they can kind of they have that basis sorted and they can build from there. Whereas whatever you do, however well you bat, you'll always be thinking, can my bowlers defend it? And if your bowlers give runs, then you just won't get very far. So I think that's something that I would like to see teams not buy these players who are kind of here and there, and really strive to get an all-round attack, so that yes, this year's IPL has probably been the most competitive that there's ever been, but it could just have kind of the decreased chance to see just bad bowling. I mean, I'm not paying to say that the players are bad, but what I'm trying to say is that if every side had a well-rounded attack, then the tournament would be even better than it is now. And you see that these teams, every team would be winning, and therefore that top four race we've seen is taken until the last game of the league phase to get to the four qualifiers. And it will be even more entertaining if every team was winning consistently. Also, T. Natarajan is also he's going to Australia as a net bowler, and I'm very happy for him. And who knows, I hope that, with the Yorkers he bowls, maybe if they could just give him a game. I know it's probably a little bit of a stretch, but I would like to see him get at least like 1 or 2 games. Maybe not, he may not be able to get a game in this tour, because I'm not really one, I'm not sure if he'll be able to get into the side, and 2, I'm not sure whether net bowlers are able to transfer to the main squad. But again, I'm just saying I would like to see him play a game here and there, because again, he's been a Yorker machine and he's had a great tournament. And having seen him from the TNPO as well, and how he's grown since then, I think it's been a great thing to see. So yeah, that was my review on KKR, and afterwards I kind of highlighted why it was so important that they made those improvements. And yeah, I understand this video has kind of stretched over a few days, because today RCB have been knocked out of IPL 2020 because they quite frankly didn't get enough runs on the board. And I kind of thought, I understand they tried to approach it in a casual way despite losing their last 4 games. They kind of just thought, approach it with a smile on their face. And even Virat Kohli actually came to open the batting today, but he got out early because Jason Holder, he kind of got strangled down the leg side, but it bounced higher because of Jason Holder's height. And it was actually a pretty hard ball to play, even though it was a strangle down the leg side. So yeah, RCB are out of the qualifiers. They just the IPL 2020, where they just didn't get enough. And Sunrisers, what a success story it will be. I hope they go on to win the thing. I mean, especially after their start to the season, and also that game against Kings 11 when they bundled up for 114. It will be some story, especially when in their last 3, and it'll be 3 if they play the next game and the finals. Or their last 6 games were against the other 3 teams that have qualified in the playoffs, and if they would win every single one of them and win the cup, that would really be something, and it would be a statement win. And I think for this recovery, I really do hope that they can pull it off. So yeah, as I said, this video has stretched over a few days, and yesterday was Virat Kohli's birthday, the 5th of November, and it stretched into my birthday, which is the 6th, and that's today. So on that note, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and please share this video with your friends. And remember, this is my opinion. What's yours?